The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio.
Hi, Carl here for ProAV TV. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another of these little weekly informal Q&A streams. I really enjoy doing these. And it's a good job because for the last week or so, we haven't really put out any other content other than this. So apologies, the channel has been a little bit quiet, to say the least, for the last week or so. The reason that it has been quiet is because we are working on a big project with Canon for next week. So we've got Canon in Motion coming next week, which is a week of exclusive promotional deals here at ProAV on Canon products. It's basically one of the largest what's called a value add promotion that we've ever run in ProAV's history, to be honest, and we've doing it with Canon for a whole week. So what we've done is I'm quite proud. I won't reveal all the details yet. We'll wait for the week, but it's coming next week. And we basically handing the flexibility of value add back to you as the customer. And so normally the way these value add promotions work is, you know, buy this camera, you get this tripod for free, or this battery for free, or something like that. There's a little bit of an incentive to get you to buy that camera. And I like that. They're very effective, but they often, from a customer's point of view, go, I already have a tripod. I don't need a battery. You know, for some people it fits them perfectly, but for some it doesn't. It's not very flexible. So I wanted to make sure that this would be quite flexible for customers, and that's what we're doing next week. So it's been a lot of work, but it is all coming together. It's also being paired around a load of content. So we've got a load of videos and interviews with prolific Canon users for you guys to watch on this channel. So next week will be very Canon themed on the channel, with lots of content going out to make up for the complete silence from us over the last couple of weeks. And also we're going to be running some workshops. So my colleagues in the technical department are running some workshops alongside Canon themselves. Basically one a day for that week. We're going to cover the R5, the C70, the C300 Mark III, C500 Mark II, and the new PTZ cameras. And we're going to be basically just running them on Zoom and doing a bit of an in-depth look at each of those products as a actual workshop, very chatty backwards and forwards format for you, so that you guys actually involved in that workshop can really get involved in it rather than just communicating through live stream chat and things like that. So really looking forward to those. So that has what's been keeping us very busy, but we are still making some content. So on Friday, the time I've got here is 3 o'clock. It's probably going to be 3 o'clock. We're still fleshing out the time a little bit with Bloom, but we're going to have a live stream with Philip Bloom this Friday, which has literally just been made public. And so we're going to do one of our normal informal chats backwards and forwards between me and Phil. This one is going to be covering essential equipment which Bloom would recommend when somebody is starting out in the industry. So it's a chance for us more experienced people, more experienced people watching, to help guide people maybe newer in the industry on what input and purchases have been important for you throughout your career, but also time for me and Bloom to just chat through various pieces of equipment, so really sort of try and sort things out, because this industry is very equipment heavy and it can be very intimidating for people who are brand new. Either somebody like a photographer, or maybe a producer, or someone getting involved in the kit for the first time, or somebody like a student that is just starting off on their journey in a career as a whole. So I think that would be a really enjoyable stream. I'm really looking forward to that one. And I thought would give us a little bit of a discussion topic for this stream. So I can see a question's already come in from Paris in the Philippines. Fantastic, thank you. Joining us all the way from Dubai, which is amazing. But throughout this, any questions that you guys leave in the chat here on YouTube or in the Facebook comments, I can see here on my laptop in front of me. And so we're going to be using that to, this is the way these weekly streams work. I basically just sit here and chat with you guys about whatever you want, really. But I thought that this stream with Bloom could be an interesting discussion topic for us for today, because that's going to be about what equipment Bloom recommends when someone's starting out. But what would you all recommend people invest in or don't invest in when starting out? What advice would you give to people who are new in the industry? I thought that would be quite interesting for us to discuss. So let me know in the YouTube chat if you've got a particular piece of equipment which is just, you've been using it for years and it's been such a solid investment that you would recommend it to anyone, or maybe, don't bother going for this, get this instead. Whatever you think it is, let me know down there. So let's crack straight on with the questions and talk about the FX6 and the FX3 for Paris in the Philippines. So nearly going to pull the trigger on one of them. Need fans due to the heat in Dubai. Yeah, I imagine. The larger body style of the FX6 and that sort of style of camera is always going to work better in the heat than a small mirrorless camera. The FX3, of course, has the fans on the back, which makes it much better. So if you really need that small form factor, FX3, as you pointed out, is absolutely the one. I would be tempted to go for the FX6 though, simply because the extra form factor and the grip design and all the rest of it is going to mean that it's not just about the fans, it's also about how far away everything is internally and how far those fans and intake things are away from all the internals to stop anything getting polluted and all the rest of it. And also how to separate the heat that the camera is generating from your hands that are holding it. If you're there in the Dubai and desert and sunshine and all the rest of it, the last thing you want when the sun's baking down on you is to also have the camera you're holding scalding your hands as well. And so just the grip and the handles and everything on the FX6 just mean that everything is a little bit further away from the core of the camera that's generating the heat. So I think that would be my recommendation. But I mean, if you really need a small camera, you are absolutely looking in the right place with the FX3. Other ones you could look at are ones like the Panasonic S1H that also have a big fan unit out the back. My colleague Dan's also pointed out to me, just quickly there, that obviously the main difference between the FX6 and the FX3 is the NDs. The FX3 doesn't have any, whereas the FX6 has that fantastic electronic variable ND system. And that is most useful when there's a lot of sunshine going about. And in Dubai, there is, well, I've never been, but I'm assuming there is a lot of sunshine going about. So NDs, yeah, would absolutely be a huge recommendation. Andreas hasn't asked a question. He's just put a froggy face. Welcome to the chat, Andreas. I'm going to start then with some questions, some pouring. If you've got any questions, let me know in the chat. These streams always take a little bit. I've got less to be talking about at the beginning than I normally do. So leave some questions there and we'll get back to those in a minute. Often takes a while to cycle in and for people to think of things, but please do let me know what equipment you would recommend for people as well. I think that would be great to talk about. Let's get started by talking about things that I'd recommend. We're not going to talk about cameras on the stream with Bloom at all. So I wonder if a good thing for me to talk about on this when Bloom's not looking and can't be angry with me is cameras. I think that would work. So let's have over to the website and just have a little look around. So I'd like to browse by category when I'm looking at these sorts of things and comparing, seeing what's out there for the same sort of price point. And we're redesigning at the moment all of the categories for the website for that to become even easier. So once our new website is up, I really recommend people just do this and navigate websites like ours by category, because it can really help give a nice big picture view of things. And then what I like to do is sort it by price, low to high, and just see, okay, what can I get for my money? And if you're starting out, you don't have that much budget. So lots of these real low priced ones, I mean, obviously you can get a camera for much cheaper than that. We tend to only really deal with professional level cameras. So, the cheapest camera that we have in this category of handheld cameras is £182 £8.50, Legria camcorder from Canon. Obviously, you can get a camera for much cheaper than that, but we're talking about cameras which we would trust for professional work. And to be honest, a lot of these, some of these are very good camcorders. The M200 is a bit consumer. I'd prefer to go for the M50. Legria is a bit. The AX53 probably would be the one here that I would start to recommend for people, really. The Legria is very good here as well. The G26 might definitely be my preference over that other one. So, we've started to go up quite a bit here in budget. But then very quickly from that price point upwards, we take a huge leap. The X-T30 from Fuji is a really hard to deny camera for its price point, because the lenses are very affordable. So the XT range as a whole system to invest in is actually one of the most affordable ones out there. And the X-T30 has got a lot of features. You get a lot for your money there. Is it the best camera on the market? Absolutely not. But is it the best that you can get in that tiny, while spending, not a huge amount of money? I think it's pretty good. It's a Super 35 APS-C sensor. You get a reasonable megapixel count, 26 megapixels. In video, where's the video mode? There we go. You get DCI 4K, which is very good. Only at real-time things. In full HD, you can get up to 60p, but 4K is only up to 30p. And small file sizes, so the record times, you're not going to record for very long on those, but the quality is going to be very good. Next step up would probably be the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Now, if you're really pushed for budget, this and a simple Micro Four Thirds lens that's quite cheap would be such a high quality tool and really let you learn a lot about making cameras. For beginner cameras, I really like these Pocket Cinema Camera 4Ks because the price is so hard to argue with. And you like, these lenses work really well with it for a more professional choice, but you can spend a lot less than that on a Micro Four Thirds lens if you want to. A couple of simple primes, and you're going to have a tool that's capable of shooting some really high quality work. And pretty much everything else that we've seen in that price point has been a camcorder or a quite limited mirrorless camera. So that would absolutely be a solid choice for people. Now we're starting to get into the realm where there's some quite good professional camcorders. You've got the JVCs of the world, good solid workhorse practical cameras. The XA40 and XA45 from Canon, and the XT3, which is a fantastic APS-C mirrorless camera. XT4 is obviously better up there, but to save a little bit of money, the XT3 is still there. And then to get up to the ones that we deal with a little bit more often, S5 would probably be a bit of a sweet spot for me, because if you forget about the autofocus, the S5 is a fantastic camera, and it's a camera that could really start to rival the Canons and the Sonys that are 2 or 3 times this price point. And so if we're looking at sweet spots in this sort of price ramp up, I would put the S5 very high on my list of ones to recommend for people. It's a good £200 cheaper ex-VAT, so probably £300 ink VAT cheaper than the Sony A7C, for example, at the moment. And it's a great camera. It really is. Right, a few little bits and bobs have started coming in. Video Editor Bloke, it's not always for new people starting out. I've been doing this stuff for over 20 years, but due to circumstances, I've had to reset and effectively begin again from scratch. Trying to decide kit to buy based on past experience when there's so much new stuff out there can be a bit overwhelming. You're getting there, though. I'm glad to hear you're getting there, Video Editor Bloke. That's exactly why we make this content, and thank you so much again for chiming in for each of these streams. It's nice to see you popping back every time. But you are absolutely right. it's a very kit heavy industry, and it's a very fast paced industry. I mean, these are professional tools, but lots of it moves at the sort of speed that you would expect from tech companies, you know, people doing consumer electronics, you know, like phones and computers and all that sort of stuff. And so it can be really hard to keep, for working professionals, constantly at it to keep up with what's new in the industry, let alone people who have been out of the loop for a couple of years and then had to come back and just go, whoa, what have I missed? That is, you are absolutely right. That can really be a struggle for people. And so you are very correct. It doesn't have to be students fresh out of uni. It could absolutely be people who have had to pause for a little bit and come back and need a little bit of guidance. Mike says, hi from Korea. Thoughts on powered XLR mics with no phantom needed, or else Pro 3.5mm input mics. In terms of which ones I recommend, we sell a huge amount of the Rodes. So the Rode NTG2 has a mic in it, you know, simple, a battery inside it. Very simple. I am right that the NTG2 is the one with the battery inside it, isn't it? And so, yeah, AA or 48 volt phantom power. So you can stick a normal AA battery in there and get some juice. Very simple, affordable microphone. Jobs are good. But then there's ones like that in all of things. I personally prefer the Sennheiser one, so the MK600, which I believe can also have AA's in it. Let me just check that. Or battery and rechargeable battery, AA size, yes. So what I don't like about this microphone is that it's quite a bit longer than the NTG2. The NTG2 is quite nice and short, which is good for just fitting into a camera bag and traveling with, particularly for people who want to use them as on-camera microphones, which is quite common at this sort of price range, although I would really recommend, whenever possible, getting the microphone off of the camera. But I just think the MKE has a slightly nicer sound. It's not as bassy, and so it tends to my ears anyway, sound a little bit more true to life, whereas the NTG and Rodes in general, including this one, sound a little bit more bassy. Okay, Randovids, thoughts, opinions, recommendations on grey cards. Do you mean for white balance grey cards, or do you mean for exposure? Either way, I nowadays just recommend people get a X-Rite. So the X-Rite color checker video, and they do it as this big one, or they do it as a small passport one. This has this side, which is a white card. So for your white balance, we white balance off of this. And for grey, it has on this side 4 grey chips. So you know you've got 90% reflectance, 18%, 20 something percent. I always forget which that one is, and then 5%. And so you can see where those line up on the actual waveform to get your exposure right. But yeah, for white balance, we use this most of the time, and I really, really recommend these. And then they make a small passport one. Color checker passport video. So this costs a slightly bit more, and it's much smaller, but it comes in this hard shell, and so that you can keep it in your camera bag and it won't get beat up, so you can protect all these delicate sort of painted chips. Plus it has a few extra tools like a back focus chart for checking back focus and all the rest of it. So yeah, I recommend those rather than an ordinary bog standard grey card. Okay, Mark Forrest says Manfrotto 504X with speed legs, good enough to support a VCT, FX6 rigged up. Don't really want to spend over £1,000. Video editor bloke says, bet you that car steers you away from Manfrotto. You know me so well. The Manfrottos are very, very popular. Let's actually look up the exact one. 504X with speed legs. Fast single legs. let's go with that one. I don't know if this is the exact one that you would be looking at, but this sort of thing from Manfrotto, they are good. They are very good. They're not amazing. The reason that I don't like them quite as much is I've never really got on with the fluid head system. I never find it's that smooth or adjustable. I find that there's a huge leap between one of these and then Millers and Satchelers. But obviously Miller and Satcheler doesn't get into your price point. What I would recommend instead, which I've talked about many times on these streams, and is the tripod that we use all the time in our work and our thing in the tripod in the showroom, is the E-Image. So E-Image GH06F, which is the head, and then the solo legs system. So it's not speed lock. You don't lock it from the top. It's these normal clamps down here, but it's cheaper than the Manfrottos. And I personally think the head has a much better fluid and counterbalance system. The head for the Manfrottos, the counterbalance system is this constantly adjustable thing. I've never really got on with the locks and the fluid head system. They're all right. I don't find them amazing. I much prefer using these ones here on the E-Image. So either a good choice. Don't get me wrong. But I prefer the E-Image ones personally. But you did say a VCT and an FX6 rigged up. I would say both of these would be okay with an FX6. The specification on both of them, the payload is about 6 kilos. The normal rule of thumb with payloads on tripods is halve it. If that's what your camera weighs, you're good to go. So if your FX6 rig weighs 3 kilos, you should be fine with both of these. If you think it's going to push that, a good option for you is the GH10L. So this is going to go a little bit higher than your budget. But the big thing with this is that it's a 100mm bowl system. So this is a 100mm bowl version of that E-Image tripod that I liked. It's got more counterbalance to it. It's got much higher payload with 10 kilograms. So you can go up to 5 kilograms easily. But the big thing about it that is the reason that I like this is because it's a 100mm bowl. The more you go up to these higher prey ranges, it's not that you don't have enough payload for the tripod that often is the problem. So, the counterbalance can still handle the payload on it. You can still get smooth moves. The problem is the bowl, 75mm bowls, are quite small. And so with a heavier tripod on it, when you're doing pans with heavier resistance on them, sometimes just literally the bowl can come unstuck and flop down. And that's the same across every single brand, every single 75mm bowls. And that's the reason why 100mm and 150mm bowls exist. And as affordable ways to get up to 100mm bowls, this one would be my recommendation. So if you can push it to your budget and you want something a bit sturdier, that one. If not, then this one. And if you want to go for the Manfrotto, you have picked a good one in the Manfrotto lineup. I do like that Manfrotto over some of the other Manfrottos, but I would personally go. Mark says it's about 5 kilograms rigged up. Yep. So I've just put in the chat, that is the GH06, and then this is the GH10. You did mention don't really want to spend over £1,000, and this is over £1,000, 1,188 ink fat. It's close, I suppose. So yeah, hopefully. Dan is pointing out to me in the chat that there is a 75mm bolt. If you want the higher payload, but maybe you think you can't stretch to the where I'm looking for the EG10. There we go. So if you can't stretch to the 100mm bowl one, this one will do for you. Manfrotto is 12 kilograms payload, so it seems. No, it's not. The head itself won't support. So the counterbalance system only goes up to 6.5 kilograms. If you were looking at 12 kilograms, that will be the legs. So the legs will have their own rating for payload. And then there's the head. And then with the head, you need to be careful as well, because there's the max weight that head can support. And then there's the max weight and minimum weight that the counterbalance system can handle. And that's the one you really want to pay attention to, because if you put a really heavy on, you're not going to be able to do anything with that camera. You're not going to be able to unlock it without it going hoof and not being able to support its own weight. If all you want to do is locked off, then fine, you can ignore the counterbalance system. But then, to be honest, you're going to be able to get away with a much cheaper tripod anyway. If anything, a fixed tripod, because you're not panning and tilting. So yeah, the Manfrotto isn't 12 kilograms. Be careful with what the payload is that you're looking at. Okay, let's get on to some other questions. Mike Laidman. He's just suggesting to the other guy on the grey cards, the X-Rite video checker a while ago. The one that I suggested, great, been good for white balance and exposure. I got the A4 sized one, not the pocket. Yep, absolutely. And that's the same one that I use on the channel. We use that a lot. So every single video that I film for this channel, I hold that up and Dan brings the camera in to whatever lighting setup we've got going on, and he white balances a custom white balance off of that. It's exactly the way that we do it. It works really well. We used to not do that in the early days of the channel when I was doing it by myself, and maybe in the early days of Dan working here. And you can really tell. Yeah, if you go back and look at those old videos, you can really tell that the color and my skin tones and everything just changes dramatically. Each video in isolation looks all right, but then you start looking at them as a whole and it just goes all over the place. You can absolutely tell that we weren't doing it properly. So no, I really, really recommend people listen to the advice out there from people who know far more than we do, like Ollie Kensington and Philip Bloom and all the rest of it. And yeah, do a correct white balance, because it really changed what we do. Andreas, do you have some experience with the new Satchel Active series? I'm close to buying an Active 10. I watched the video you've made about the Active 8 already. I don't have a huge amount of experience with them other than talking with customers about them a bit, and what you've already seen in the video. I really like them though. I mean, they are they're high price tripods. They're, in terms of value for money, there are lots of options out there that are much cheaper. But in terms of quality and speed, I would call them my favorite tripods on the market at the moment. Particularly the Active 8, I think, is a real sweet spot. The 10 is everything the 8 is, but just a higher payload. So if you need the higher payload, go for the 10. The 6 is a little bit under featured compared to the 8. It loses out on some of the counterbalance settings and all the rest of it. So particularly the 8, I think is just, I would, with no budget not being a problem whatsoever, I could just pick one tripod to use. That would probably be it for me. I think it's a fantastic tripod system. I missed Robert Horton. What monitor and video output cards would you recommend for a Resolve user considering moving to HDR? Thanks, Bob. Well, I can tell you what we use. So we have the Blackmagic Ultra Studio 4K Mini. So this one I personally think is just a must-have if you're working in Resolve and HDR. It gives you all the metadata bits and bobs that you need. It gives you all the connections that you need. It can give you a 4K HDR signal out of it. It gives you SDIs, gives you HDMIs, gives you all of the bits and bobs that you need. It's very, very powerful and can do a much more than this as well. But this is what we're using to get the 4K signal out. And then we are pairing that with, so we're not doing HDR delivery right now. What has happened there? Oh, I know what's happened. My entire laptop's died. That's what's happened, Dan. I can't carry on showing them. Could you... I don't know why that has happened. My power seems to be plugged in properly. I'll carry on talking if you can have a fish about at my feet with the cables. Sorry about this. My laptop apparently wasn't plugged in when I thought it was. What was I talking about? So monitors. So we're not doing a full HDR grade on the entire channel just yet. We're still doing it in normal SDR. Just because not really many people are doing full HDR grades for YouTube yet. But we are set up so that we can do it if we want to. We've got a SWIT HDR monitor, so it's the FM21 HDR. And once my laptop comes back to life, I will show you that. What are we going to do if my laptop doesn't come back to life? Probably just end the stream, I imagine, because I can't see. I could see the chat on your laptop, I suppose. Anyway, so the SWIT, I think it is coming back to life. So the SWIT one is very good. It's 1000 nits, so it's not quite bright enough for true HDR delivery, and it's not that color accurate, and it's quite hard to calibrate. But for budget options, that's very, very good. You could also look at just using a smaller monitor for HDR. So any of these high brightness on-camera monitors, you can get away with using those for HDR. Okay, right, my laptop might well be back now. There we go. Sorry about that. So this is the monitor I was talking about. Interestingly, my monitor's all blurry now. So this is the one I was talking about. It's a bit tricky to calibrate. I like their other ones for calibration, but this one's 1000 nits and it supports HDR, so this would be the one for high brightness work. The Sony's are also very good. If I go to the actual reference monitor bit, there's also the new Atomos Neons, which would be very good. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so yes, this X200 would be, my ideal choice. X2400. They Sony are top of the game for these sorts of reference monitors. They have been for a long time. They make the absolutely fantastic X400 industry standard one, and then this is the sort of smaller version. But obviously that comes with a price tag. The Atomos Neons would be a good sort of middle ground option, because one like this Canon one, this 20 grand one, that's what you really need for that, and the X400, which is even more expensive than that. I think it's about 25,000 is what you really need for proper HDR delivery. So we can't quite get to that for most of us. So for that, I recommend these are pretty good and of what we've used. Or just simply using something like an Atomos Shogun, or a small HD high brightness monitor, and using that as a very small reference monitor, or a simple consumer TV could also work. Whew. Okay, that was a stressful answer to a question with my laptop dying in the middle of it. Right, let's have a drink and carry on. Clayton Saren says, I'd suggest a really solid tripod. I use the Manfrotto 502AH Pro Video head. Not the cheapest, but it's a great tripod that is friction based, but not too big and unwieldy. Oh, it's functional, sorry, but not too big and unwieldy. Yes, I thoroughly recommend investing in a good tripod. Like I said, personally, I prefer the e-image range to the Manfrotto range down at that price point. But the 502 is pretty much, that's been one of the most popular tripods for a very long time. But to me, it just doesn't have the repeatable fluid drag settings, and you just got to sort of crank it tight to move it. It doesn't feel very fluid based to me, so I would personally much prefer to go for the image ones, but you're spending more. So Mr. B says, is it true the C500 Mark II will have a price drop soon? I haven't heard anything about a price drop incoming. We've got some deals coming so if you're looking to buy a C500 Mark II, there's some very good deals for that coming next week in our Canon InMotion offer, but I haven't heard about just a generic price drop. Video Editor Bloke says, I've used a few Manfrotto heads over the years, but I wouldn't go for one now. I found the Satchler to be much more superior. They're more expensive, but there are also second-hand ones out there. Yeah, I don't want this to turn too much into them. I know I can be quite critical of Manfrotto tripods. To be clear, I love Manfrotto. I think they do some great products. I love their arms. We use a lot of their clamps and everything here all around the showroom. I think they do some really good stuff. It's just that in that middle range tripod specifically, I do think there are some better options out there. But yeah, you're right. The Satchler in particular, as well as the Miller and brands like that, are much, much better. The Satchler FSB range or the new Active 8 range is just a different league. Okay, Mike F says, DSC Labs and X-Rite used to be color standards for video and still respectively. Has this changed? Yes, it has changed. So X-Rite did start off in stills, absolutely. They do a lot more in video now, a lot more. And that video ones, so they make two ranges. So if I search for X-Rite, we will see these color checker proof and that's sort of ones. Color checker white balance, those are video products, and these the video target and the passport video, those ones are the video orientated ones. So this color checker proof, for example, these color chips on here will match up with Adobe Space, I think, certainly, or sRGB maybe, one of those stills based color spaces. Whereas everything in here, these color chips, will match up perfectly for Rec 709. So they're a video standard. And because they match for Rec 709, they will then match for any other color spaces and HLG and everything you might be working in, but they're video. So yes, you're right that DSC Labs have got more of a grounding in true video work, but they are also much more expensive. Right. Steve Brookfield says, I've been with productions for about 15 years. 2 years ago, I became solo multi-camera operator for classical music. I started out with 4 Canon 70D cameras and have grown using them. I'm now wanting to get the Canon C70 for A camera and Blackmagic 6Ks for B cameras. I'm torn between the Pro and the straight 6K because of having NDs. The C70 will eventually be my A cam. Undecided. Help. Interesting that you want to change up the brands. Why changing the... It would be more common to go for something like the C70 as your A camera and then smaller, cheaper Canons, for example, like camcorders or something like that, as your B cameras. Particularly for multi-camera production for classical music, that would be quite common. Anything you want depth of field, deep depth of field on, like the wide at the back, you could use a PTZ or you could use a camcorder. And then anything that's much more cinematic with a shallower depth of field, like the close-ups, you use the C70. That would sort of be my go-to for that. I'm not sure, to me, the C70 and the Blackmagic 6Ks tick the same box in terms of the style of product it is. And so if you're very used to the Canons and you want to go for the C70 as your A camera, I'm not entirely sure on the reasoning for the Blackmagic, the B camera. I mean, both are great cameras. For that sort of work, though, I normally lean towards the Canon. The autofocus I find very, very useful in that sort of multi-camera work. Scott, hey Carl, when will you be getting the Kinefinity Edge? It would be great for you to do some testing with Philip Bloom, as they have one in Europe now. I know they do. I'm following it with much, much attention, and we are talking to Kinefinity regularly, and the conversations normally go something along the line of, when is our camera getting to us? we're not sure, hopefully as soon as possible. And that's the end of the conversation. They are getting one to us. It's shipping. They had one unit went into Europe to the European distributor, and that has now gone around a couple of little places there in mainland Europe, but mainly for the last few days has been with Jerome from Cap for Gear in Amsterdam, who is probably where you've been seeing some of the testing from in Europe. It also spent a little bit of time with the guys over at Cine D, places like that. So that is one single camera, which is the only camera that is in Europe. So because of the problems getting in and out of the UK and all the rest of it, we're letting Europe, make the most of it in Europe, and one is being sent directly to us here in the UK. And when it's here in the UK, the plan is to do a lot with it. And yes, absolutely, of course, I will be talking to Philip to get some good hands-on time for him with one, because Philip has been paying very close attention, obviously, to Kinefinity for years now. He's spoken a lot about the Mavo LF and the Terra 4K over the last few years, and I'm sure he would love to see the Edge as soon as he can. So he will be one of the very first people in the UK to get one. Don't you worry. But at the moment, yep, there isn't one in the UK. We are getting it as soon as we possibly can. But it's not a final unit yet. The ones that have gone out are final in terms of hardware, but the software on them is still very much being developed. So there's also, they've sent one to see what they think, and it's gone to some early distributions, but I think before they're sending out too many to go to people that are really going to push it to its limits, like Philip, like some other ambassadors around Europe, and some of our other customers that we want to send it to see what they think. I think Kinney are quite keen to just get a few other little bits and bobs wrapped up on the software front. So that being said, it should be imminent, as in within a few weeks, hopefully. Fingers crossed, because I really want to have a play with it. It's a very, very exciting camera, and everything that I've been seeing coming out of the one that has been in Europe, whether that be with Cine D, whether that be with Jerome, or the guys at Kinefinity Europe directly, I think it's all looked fantastic. And I think the design of the camera looks so well thought out. I am very excited for the Edge. Okay, Andy Wilkins just popping back on Steve's point about different brand cameras, saying having two different brand cameras may be a pain in the arries for grading. Yep, absolutely. Bob says, sorry, didn't mean to kill the laptop. Whoops. Video editor blog, I wish the X-Rite color checkers worked automatically with Premiere like they do for Resolve, i.e. one click, etc. It's doable, but it takes more work. What I would say on that is that I've never found the one in Resolve to actually do it properly. So I don't use it. Dan doesn't. Dan, have you ever used in a project? No, he's just shaking his head at me. We have tested it and tried it out, and it's looked wrong every single time. So maybe they've improved it since we last did that, but for the most part, I would just say ignore that. The most important bit of the X-Rite color checker is the white balance chip. If you get that right, you'll be good, and things will all match. So mostly I use the X-Rite for in-camera, getting it right. For our videos, we don't actually even show the other side and use that as a reference. We just custom grade them to do however we want, because we're not matching multiple things together. Technically, we should be doing that, and I'm sure Ollie Kensington would look down on me, like the idiot that I am. But the most important bit I would say is get the white balance in camera right. Okay, S.A. Khalik, is the FS5 good enough for pro documentary, say for Netflix or film festivals, with the A7S II as a B camera? Is it good enough for a pro documentary? Yes, absolutely. Is it good enough for Netflix? No, it wouldn't be on Netflix's approved list. So Netflix have a very strict approved list. Now, technically, this only matters. Let's see if it will come. Netflix approved cameras and image capture. So in this bit on their website, so they have a list of approved cameras here. If we go on Sony, these are the ones which are approved. So this isn't a comprehensive list of everything that they will take on their platform. They Netflix and any of these other streaming sites, you know, the Amazon Videos of the world, the Apple iTunes, all the rest of it, Apple TV, they will accept anything that is good. But if they're commissioning you to make something, they're going to want it to be on, in Netflix's case, one of these cameras. That's a quality control thing for them to make sure that it's of as high quality as it can be and that will match their streaming site. So for them in Sony's line, you've got the FX9 there. Obviously the Venice is there, the F55, F65, the FS7 and FS2 are there. The F5, the FX6 is there. And then 2 broadcast cameras, the Z450 and the Z750. So in Sony's lineup, that's your lot. So that would the most affordable camera there would either be the FS7 and the FS7 Mark II or the FX6. There are more affordable cameras than that. So in Blackmagic, notice that the pockets aren't here, whereas the Mirror Mini Pros are. Interestingly, the 12K isn't yet. That's interesting. I'm not sure why that is. Not Panavision, they don't have the cheaper ones. Panasonic definitely was the one I was meant to click on there. And the reason I click on those is because the S1H and the BGH1 are full Netflix approved. So if you're looking for a Netflix approved camera that for the lowest price point, which I assume is why you're looking at the FS5, those are probably the ones to look at. I don't think Canon have got anything that would end up cheaper than those in their lineup. The C70's there, which is good to see, as is the C300 Mark II, and the original C500 actually. So if there's any of those knocking about, that could be an option. But yeah, those are the ones you're going to want if you want. Technically, if you're selling it to Netflix, you don't need it, because they, as I said, they'll accept anything as long as the story's good enough. But what we normally say to people is, it can't hurt, can it? You know, if you're trying to sell something to someone like that, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to say, yeah, fine, we'll buy that for our platform. And if it's already fitting their technical requirements, it's just a tick box, isn't it? You know, it's an easy tick box to make it a more usable and more valuable proposition for them on paper. Okay. Steve is saying the A cam will also be for interview work, and I'm wanting the dual pixel NNDs for outside. My B cams will be mainly locked off and indoors, so dual pixel autofocus or NDs is not a priority. Absolutely, that makes sense. But I think my point, and who was it that chimed in earlier? Andy's point was that if you have several brands of cameras, then you know the look can be quite dramatically different between them. So there are lots of tools to help with that. Like there's one now called Cinematch, which looks really good, which is made by the same guys as Film Convert. You know, you can use tools like this and get them looking pretty similar, and getting the log curves out of them to match, things like that. But to be honest, you know, using similar brand cameras always helps. Video Bloke says, you mentioned earlier about Canon workshops. Do you think you might do something similar for other camera manufacturers, i.e. Sony, in the future? If you want us to, yep, of course we can look at doing that. Absolutely, we can look at doing that. We don't normally do those sort of Zoom closed workshops simply because I prefer to put my time and effort into these live streams instead. You know, we've only got a small team here, limited resources, so I can only do so many things at once. Hence why the channel's been very quiet while we've been putting this Canon promotion together. So because of that, I've sort of got to prioritize different things which I think I want to prioritize, and I tend to have focused on prioritizing the much more public live streams content because it's been going very well. So maybe in the future, as the team expands here, we can look at doing much more regular Zoom workshops. Or if they're very, very popular, maybe I've got it wrong and I should be prioritizing those a little bit more. So let me know what you think. But yeah, it's certainly something we enjoy doing and would like to do more of, definitely. So yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up for today. Thank you very much for your questions. Sorry that my laptop gave up the ghost in the middle of that. I'm not entirely sure what was happening there. But we got over it. So thank you all so much for your questions. Make sure you come and join us for that stream with Philip on Friday, which I'm really looking forward to. I think this will be a really good chat. We've had some great chats about tripods and bits and bobs to recommend. It's always great to pick Phil's brains and see what he thinks about this sort of stuff. So please do tune in for that. At the moment, it's scheduled for 3 o'clock on Friday. That might change depending on Phil's schedule, but so it might be a different time. But stick that in your diary and come and join in. And of course, remember, next week we've got this big week of promotions for Canon, this Canon In Motion week, which we will share much more details of over time. So yeah, make sure you come and join us for that. For the meantime, though, thank you very much for joining me. And if you want to buy any of the bits and bobs that we've talked about today, head over to proav.co.uk. Thank you, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.
For content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd.